Who is God to you? If you had to use a word to describe your friendship or your relationship or your way of communicating with God, what sort of title would you put on that relationship? Who is God to you? Loving? A loving relationship? Okay, that's wonderful. Anyone else? The Almighty? Is that who he is to you? The Almighty? Okay. Guidance? Okay. So he's your guide or yes? Your father, lovely. So it's a father relationship that you have with him, father and son. Beautiful. I didn't hear that one? Creator God. Okay, so he's the creator and you are his creature that he has created. Yes, wonderful. A companion, a friend, yes? Somebody who accompanies you? Companion, yes. So now I have another question. Let's flip that question a little bit. Who are you to God? How does he see you? In your relationship, how is he seeing you? He's seeing you as his daughter? Yes. Anyone else? His young child, okay? His young child. Yes, you know, God sometimes throws a word out there and he may call a certain person his friend or, you know, his servant or something like that. What is the word that God would say over you if he was summarizing your relationship? So I like the young child, that was nice. Not that many questions, no, that many answers for this question. Okay. Fair enough. So God has called different people at different stages in their life, different things to him, based on the relationship that they have. There are 3 different categories that most people fall into. And that's not limited to these categories only, but these are the 3 I'm going to be focusing on. So one is friends. God is friends, and he sees us as friends. The other one is servants. God sees us as his servant. And the other one is, like some of you have said, a child. So it can be a child as an adult, where he calls us sons and daughters, and that's an adult who has reached a certain stage in their life where they can represent their family. So he sees us as family. And adult children, he refers to in the Bible as sons and daughters. But when he speaks to them and they are like young children, he says the children of God. And this means that they are still growing or they're still quite young. So based on these 3 groups, we're just going to talk about it a little more. So we know the type of friendships that we have. If we're speaking about friends and you say that someone is your friend, does anyone have a definition of what a friend is? Come on, church, let's talk together. A companion, yes? Is that someone who accompanies you to events or does things with you? When you say companion, what do you mean? Someone to hang out with. Nice. Okay. Sarah? Someone that we can talk to. A friend is someone that we can talk to. Yes, and we can sort of share anything with them, you know. We hope there's no judgment. If they're a good friend, there is no judgment. Yes? Someone that we can talk to. Someone loyal? Yes, someone loyal. Does that mean they won't leave you? Okay, so they're always by your side. Yes, that's a good friend. That's a good friend. So the dictionary defines a friend as a person with whom one has a bond of mutual affection. The Cambridge Dictionary says it is a person who you know well and who you like a lot, and who is usually not a member of your family. So it can be, you can be friendly with your family members, but a friend is characterized as someone who is not necessarily related to you. And there are different types of friendships, aren't there? I mean, we get different friends. Of course, you're not the same kind of friend that you are with every one of your acquaintances or your friends. So there are some that are spiritual friends, someone that you can rely on to pray for you when things are difficult, and that you're actually able to open up to that person and share your difficulties with. So this is a trusted friend that you can trust your spiritual life with. There are also other friends that are maybe advisory friends. You know those friends that always want to give you advice on how you need to live your life? I had a friend like this. So it was actually a friend that was also tied to a few cultural strains. And so this friend was a year older than me, but in the Indian culture, I would have to refer to this person not as a friend, but as an older sister. And I would call her by a term that meant older sister. And this was a friendship. I mean, 1 year is not that much, but whenever I would speak to this friend, she felt that as an older sister, she had to always be advising me on how to raise my children, how to do certain things, how to cook certain recipes. And so she was always giving me advice. And that put a lot of strain on the relationship. I never felt that I was in a position to tell her something, you know, or if she's giving me advice about parenting and I'd say, well, that's really good. Have you tried it on your son? You know, and that would kind of, it wasn't always the best of friendships. And I had quite a few friends like this in life that sort of are friends with you, and at the background, there's always something that they kind of want to put you down. You know, they're friends, but if you do something wrong, they're the first person to reprimand you. Oh, but you know, you stepped out of line here, or you should be doing this, or you should be doing that. There are some friends like that. Some friends that we believe are there only when there's good times. Some friends that you can have fun with, but not necessarily friends that are there for you when you need them or in times of trouble. There are friends that are only there for us when we are in trouble. Those friends that we go to speak about problems, and we know that we can find solutions with them, and we feel comfortable listening to them. There are other friends that don't want to be asked in times of trouble. They only want to spend the good hours with you, or they want to share their problems with you, and not necessarily vice versa. What sort of friend do you think Jesus is? So one of the words that came up was loyal. Definitely loyal. Anyone else? Trustworthy? Right. Right. Faithful. You will be a friend. Yes. So I'm reminded of the verse that says that there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother, and that's Jesus, isn't it? So he can be like our brother at times, but he is also like this friend that will stick so close to you that even your relatives are not as close as he can be. So he's that kind of friend. And Jesus has some friends in the Bible. Can we think of anyone that he mentioned is his friend, or that the author of a certain book in the Bible said that this person is Jesus or God's friend? Anyone that comes to mind? Lazarus. Yes, Lazarus was a friend. Luke? Did Luke say that he was a friend? Okay. Sarah? Enoch. Yes. Enoch was definitely a friend to God, and he took his friend to heaven with him, didn't he? So that's amazing. Lazarus, Enoch. Anyone else? Well, John thought that he was Jesus' beloved, right? So he was in this love relationship with him, and he perceived that he was the most loved disciple. That was his perspective, right? Jesus didn't necessarily say, John, you are the one I love most, but John thought that. And And that's not a bad thing. We can have that too. My husband, for instance, believes that he's God's favorite. I do too. So, I think that it's based on your relationship with God and how you perceive your relationship. You may think that you are God's favorite. We should all think like that, right? And so, yes, John did think that. The other one was Abraham. And Abraham was also seen as God's friend. And they communed with one another on several occasions. And it says that his faith was counted as righteousness. Was he a righteous man? When we look at his life story, did he always behave in a righteous way? No. But God saw him as righteous because he was so faithful. He stuck with God. Whether he was lying, even in his lies, he stuck with God. Even when he was doing something wrong, he still stuck with God. And God said that he would make him the father of nations, that he only had one son that God counted. So God doesn't necessarily see us a particular way based on the standards of everyone else. He bases it on his relationship with us. So according to our standards, Abraham may not have been righteous. Neither was Noah, if we look at his life. Noah wasn't a very righteous man. He was given to alcohol. He was an alcoholic. Couldn't wait for the ark to land, and then the first thing that he produced, rather than planting vegetables, was making alcohol. And he got so drunk. But yet, the Bible tells us that God saw Noah as a righteous man. What was the right acts that he did? Maybe willing to obey and build the ark when no one else would. Maybe you have to be a little crazy to be able to follow such instructions that were never followed before. But God sees things in us that man wouldn't. And he would definitely see things in you and see things in me that others wouldn't. We are so ready to say, but you remember what this person did? I remember. I know who they are. I remember when they did this and it was so bad and they're so undeserving. And yet God will only see that point when you turn to him and you reached out to him and something changed in your life. And for him, that's it, and he will count you righteous. It doesn't take much to be saved with God. He's that kind of person. So the other aspect that we're going to deal with is a servant. So does anyone have a definition of what a servant is? Don't confuse it with a slave. What is a servant? Someone who serves? Yes, in the general sense, yes. Someone who serves. The dictionary tells us that it is a person who performs duties for others, especially a person employed in a house, on domestic duties, and as a personal attendant. Another definition is a person employed in the service of government or court, and that can be a civil servant. A devoted supporter or a follower, a great servant of the Labour Party, for instance. And the biblical definition is someone who voluntarily chooses to serve a certain household, like Abraham's servant. And he was counted as a son in his home. This decision was made by putting on earrings. You were given the opportunity to become, maybe you started off as a slave, you didn't have a choice in the matter, you were born into as a servant in that household, and as you grew, you were given the decision whether to be set free and live your life, or to remain in that home and to continue to serve that family and possibly be employed. So they would give you a wage, whether that wage is in food or whether that wage is in accommodation, whatever the case may be. But as you made that choice, you would put on an earring to demonstrate to everyone in that community that you now belong to this home, that you would faithfully serve this home, and you would possibly be compensated. If you were not compensated in a wage, you could also inherit from the household, like a son or a daughter. And that would be the type of servant that God refers to when he calls us servants. Now, Jesus said that he came not to be served, but to serve. And he has taught us servant leadership. So you need to be a servant before you can lead others. So that was the example that he gave. What do you think he was trying to teach us when he brought in this idea of servanthood? Maybe humility? Maybe respect for God, how we ought to respect him, see him as our Lord, and obviously the authority in our lives to lead and direct us heavenward, obviously. So Jesus taught us this, and he wanted us to be able to gain or build your relationship with God starting out as a servant. You don't start out as friends, do you, when you come to God? You start out as a servant. You learn how to follow the rules, how you ought to behave, what you ought to do. And as you grow in your friendship with God, you know why you are doing it. And it's usually based on love if you have a good relationship with God. So it is a servant that comes to a point, or I should say maybe even a slave. I know that doesn't sit comfortably with everyone, but if you come to God as a slave, maybe even our children, they don't have a choice in accompanying us to church right now. But as they grow and build their own relationship with God, they become like that servant who was asked, would you like to be set free and do your own thing? Or would you like to continue serving this home? And you get to make that choice. As you develop further in your relationship with God, you get to the friend status. And then Jesus speaks to us in John chapter 15. And I'm going to ask you to just go there in your Bibles. John chapter 15. And we're going to be reading from verse 15. And so Jesus is speaking in this chapter, and he's talking about this great love that he wants his disciples to exhibit. And he says that you will do all that I say you should do. You will follow my commandments because I've loved you and you love me. So based on this relationship of love, and I'm just paraphrasing from verse 11, and it says, he's telling them all these things that they should be able to do because he wants his joy to remain in them. So this sees a different side of Jesus. To the world, he was a man of sorrows. But to the disciples, he was this man of joy. And he wanted to leave his joy with them as he's now returning to the Father. And so he was telling them about this time. I want you to have this joy in your heart. In verse 12 it says, and this is my commandment. And it's not a very difficult commandment. He's saying, I want you to love one another the same way that I've loved you. And that was without judgment. It was without expectation. He loved them just for who they were. And he accepted them and was able to accept the kind of love that they were able to offer him. But he wanted them, instead of bickering with one another, who's the greater disciple or who's better and who understands Jesus better, he wanted to break that down and say, just love one another. And if you can love one another, that will demonstrate or that will witness to everyone else that you've been with me. And then in 13, he tells them, there isn't a greater love than between friends. But the kind of friend that he wanted them to be is the kind of friend he is, to lay down their life for their friends. So they should be willing to love them even unto death, to be willing to die for them in their place. That's how much he wanted them to love one another. So the degree of love is much higher than the common love that we have between friends. And then in verse 14 he says, you are my friends if you do whatever I have told you to do. or whatever I've commanded you. And what was the commandment? To love. It wasn't the commandment to keep the 10 commandments. It was the command to love. And so you will be my friends if you demonstrate this love to others. And then verse 15 says, henceforth, I call you not servants. So remember now we've moved on to the stage from servant, and they were serving him. You are no longer servants, for servants don't know what the master is doing. They don't know his inner plans. They don't know the plans that he has for the household. They don't know the plans that he has for the family. He doesn't have to include servants in those discussions. But he would talk about it with his friends. And that is what he's inviting us into. He's saying, you are now friends. He says, and I have called you friends, for all things that I've heard of my Father, I've made known to you. So this is the family talk. God the Father and the Word, Jesus, is now discussing the plan of salvation for the human race and how he's going to accomplish it. And he's now sharing that with his friends. So he has held nothing back. He's opened everything to us. And how fortunate we are as Adventists to know the truth as friends talk to one another. We know the inner plans that God has. We know the plans that he has for judgment in this world as well, and how the devil and his angels will be judged for all that they have done in this world. We also know that, sadly, if we choose to hold on to some of our sins, our pet sins, that is what awaits us as well, judgment. And he tells us like friends. You know, like how when a friend sees you going wrong, they can see that you're on a dark path, and they say to you, man, I love you, and I'm telling you as a friend, if you continue this, you're going to self-destruct. Something is going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. Or maybe you've shared about a sin that you've committed with your friend, and your friend tells you, oh, that's really not good. You're either going to get caught, you're going to, how long can you run from this? And if you continue down this path, no good will come out of it. That's a true friend speaking to you. So God is that friend too. He's able to tell us everything that's going to happen in the future, as well as what has happened in the past, and he can explain that to us. And he is the only one who can tell you where your life is going to end up. The rest of us can only predict, but it may not come true. But with God, he knows the future. He understands it. He understands the choices that we're going to make even before we've made them. He knows what's coming. And so when this friend of ours tells us something that we ought to do to change something in our lives, you better know it's for your good benefit. He only tells us what will make us better. It is not to judge us or to call us out on something that we've done wrong. It's just to get us to a position where we can easily walk into heaven and be with him forever. He wants his friend to be with him, just like he was with Enoch. He wants to be able to walk with you and then take you to where he is, so that you will be with him always. Verse 16 says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and I've ordained you. Now, we have turned that into an ordination, and we don't think that it's for the common man. We think that that's for pastors, right? A pastor should be ordained. But here God is using it in the sense that he has blessed us and set us apart for his purpose. That's what ordination means according to the Bible. So God says, you haven't chosen me. So when he was looking for a friend, in every new country that I've gone to, I've often prayed for God to send me a friend. And sometimes it takes a long time before that friend is revealed. And I'm still looking through and I'm seeing, okay, well, this person is nice. I'd like to spend some time with them. But I'm looking for that special person that can journey with me in the experience that I'm going through. And God often grants it, but not immediately. And from all the people that I'm friends with or acquaintances that I have, I would choose a particular person that I feel I could grow with. And I want it to be mutual. You know, I want to be able to influence that person and have their influence in my lives too. So this is what I imagine God is saying when he's talking to his disciples here, and he's saying, you didn't choose me. I chose you. And that's what he's saying to us today. We may like to choose Jesus as a friend because he's an incredible friend. But would he choose you? If he was looking through all the people in the world, he didn't say it to everyone, that everyone was his friend. He didn't. He chose specific people in their walk with him and called them friends. Or other people who are writing in the Bible looked at that relationship and called them friends. So Jesus is saying, I choose you. With your personality, with your character traits, with the experiences that you have gone through, I could share some of my story with you. Can you imagine God sharing his story with you in a unique experience that only you have experienced? One such person was Abraham, and he had an experience like no other has experienced. God was sharing his most intimate moment of pain and suffering with his friend. And you know what I'm talking about. He asked Abraham, go and sacrifice your son, your only son, this son that you've been waiting for to be called the father of nations. Take him and go and sacrifice him to me. That was a big ask. I was talking about this story to Steve this week, and I was saying, God definitely didn't go to Sarah and tell her this. If he had said, Sarah, you know how difficult it was for you to have this baby in the first place, and you went all through that, you know, that experience with Hagar and Ishmael and, you know, the whole big mess there. Now that you have the son and he's so incredible and he's so handsome and you have named him joy and laughter, take that one and go and sacrifice him on the mountain. She would have said, oh, hell no, I won't do it. She would have stopped Abraham if he shared that information with her, because a mother's love is just like that. I don't know about a father's love, whether or not it's different, but Abraham was willing to listen. There wasn't anything between these two friends that they couldn't share. And Abraham was going to share the life of his only begotten son. It wasn't his only son, but his only begotten son. He was willing to share that with God. And so God takes him up to that mountain, and he is sharing the most horrible experience that God the Father would ever have to go through in losing his son and sacrificing them for people who don't even care. What would be the point of sacrificing Isaac? Who was he going to save? What was his life going to be used for if it was going to be offered on that altar? Abraham didn't ask these questions. He just took his son early in the morning, like you wouldn't even wait until the next night. He just took his son early in the morning, packed the donkey up, and they took some servants and went off. And they were going to do as God had said. And he explained it to his son, and they have such a great relationship that he explains it, and Isaac says, I'm on board. Sacrifice me. Tie my hands really tight because I don't want to give up at the last minute. I want to be sacrificed to God. Can you imagine this strange conversation? It must have been really weird. But this is the kind of conversation that God, the Father, is having with Jesus before the foundation of this earth. This was the discussion that they were having. And Jesus, just like Isaac, says, sign me up. I'm willing to go. And I will die for them whether they want me or not. And so God is sharing this wonderful experience of this father and son relationship and the loss that he would experience. All the way up that mountain, Abraham must have been thinking about losing his son. Maybe he thought God would raise him on that last day because he believed in the resurrection. But whatever it was, he was willing to go through with it. And God said, I can't let my friend experience that much pain. So stop. And he sent this angel to stop it and say, don't actually go through with it, because if you did, it would tear your heart apart. But God did it. He still did it for us. And he went through that incredible pain based on the love that he has for us. And it's that love that he's asking us to exhibit to one another. Do we have that love? Are we there yet? Maybe not. But we can grow that with our great friend who wants to teach us and wants to mold us. And we don't have to be servants our whole life. We can move into that friend zone and experience a deeper relationship with God based on this love that would hold nothing back. Pending death, death would not seem a huge sacrifice. And it wouldn't seem like a huge sacrifice for each one of us. It may be easy for you to say, I would die for my children, or I would die for my husband or my wife. It's quite difficult to say, I would die for that person in that pew sitting over there that I don't know really well. But that's the kind of love that God wants us to have. When God asks us to be perfect, he only asks us to be perfect in one aspect, and that's love. So I know that our love is still growing, and that many of us are still in that child zone in our relationship with God. And he wants to call us sons and daughters. He wants us to reach that place where we can represent him. But I think the ultimate relationship that he wants to have with us is that deep friendship based on love. And you can take it to another level too. You can even say that I am his child, and as his child or as his daughter or son, we are also friends. Some of us have that relationship with our own parents, where we see them as friends and we can talk to them about anything. Very fortunate are you if you had that experience. So there are different aspects of our friendship and our relationship with God. Wherever yours is today, I hope that you would expand that relationship and be open to different ways in which you can reach a higher understanding of God's love and project that to everyone else so that they can see that you've been with him. May you be blessed.